Welcome to the Hollywood in Toto podcast, the right take on entertainment. The HiT cast offers a weekly look at Hollywood from a conservative point of view. Sick of media bias infecting Hollywood headlines? Tired of stars insulting your views? HiT has your back. Now, here's your host, Christian Toto.
Welcome to episode 110 of the Hollywood in Toto podcast, the right take on entertainment. This week we're speaking with comedian Alex Elkin. Comic Steve McGrew, a friend of this podcast, connected me to Alex recently, and I'm really glad he did. I think you'll be glad too. Make sure to pick up Alex's new comedy album, Screaming at Shapes, available now on iTunes. Well, it's official. James Gunn will direct Guardians of the Galaxy 3 after all. Assuming some of our heroes aren't officially dust following the Avengers Infinity War dust-up. Now, the director's gross pedophile comments from back in the day caused his dismissal in the first place. Now, suddenly, they aren't stopping him from getting behind the camera again? Well, what does it all mean? For starters, I gotta say the timing is pretty darn curious. The left is currently trying to get Tucker Carlson knocked off of Fox News for some gross comments he made more than a decade ago on a shock jock show. Yet that fire appears to be dimming. The outrage against him is, well, it's going away. Tucker Carlson stood his ground, defiantly so, and that's how you deal with the PC police. Don't give them an inch. Now, we just learned that Gunn is coming back. I can't help but think the two are somehow connected. Maybe that's the conspiratorial side in me. Something that didn't exist a few years ago, but it's getting stoked by current events. Another note? Well, does this mean that Roseanne comes back too? Is all forgiven? Of course not. The rules are not the same in our culture, not by a long shot. Roseanne's quasi-embrace of Trump cannot be forgiven, ever. She is out. She's never coming back. Of course, what has to happen for all this outrage stuff to go away is mutually assured destruction, and we saw a hint of that with Gunn's dismissal. If liberals know that they'll lose gigs for saying the wrong thing, or getting caught saying the wrong thing, they might start fighting the PC police alongside their conservative enemies. Until then, nothing really has changed. As it stands right now, Gunn is back. And it's only set the third Guardians movie back a few months, maybe a little bit more. He's going to get paid. He's now back in Disney's good graces, especially if the third film does very well. And it's unlikely there's going to be any sort of second wave of outrage coming back at him. They've already found those tweets. They've already been judged. And essentially, they've been dismissed. We still have a very serious cultural problem on our hands that has not been solved. And that's a shame.
You're listening to my daddy's podcast. He still sleeps with the nightlight on.
Here's the HiT tweet of the week. You know, we just don't feature Rob Reiner enough here. And to be fair to this director who gave us Spinal Tap and Stand By Me and The Princess Bride, I wanted to hold my fire just a little bit in deference to his talent. You know, there's a lot of crazy town tweets I could mention here, but I picked one which is interesting, thought-provoking, and just a smidge crazy. Here's Rob's advice to his fellow Democrats as we head into the 2020 presidential campaign. Existential imperative for 2020. Remove the liar. Nominee must be someone who has the policy, ideas, and character that connects with voters. Can go toe-to-toe with the liar. Critical. A woman on the ticket, either at the top or as Veep. And no trashing fellow Democrats. Earth to Rob, voters are going to be laughing way too hard at the Green New Deal to pay any attention to your tips. Sorry.
You're listening to the Hollywood in Toto podcast, the right take on entertainment.
My HiT tip of the week is Paddleton. This Netflix original stars Ray Romano and Mark Duplass as longtime chums facing a crisis. Mark's character has terminal cancer. What happens next is a beautiful, quiet portrait of male friendship, the bonding, the arguments, the spending hours and hours eating bad pizza and watching worse kung fu movies. Sorry, those movies really look terrible. It's also, of course, about loss and moving on and how do you get from point A to point B. Now, Romano, a comedian by trade, has got the harder role here. His character is on the autism spectrum, no doubt. His social interactions are awkward to say the very least, but that doesn't interrupt the bond he has with his fellow character. Now, Paddleton isn't a great film, and I kind of struggled with whether I was going to mention it at all this week, but it's hard to watch at times, and not just because of the subject matter, but like I said, those clumsy interactions, man, you just squirm in your seat just hoping that he'd say the right thing, do the right thing, somehow emerge from a conversation intact. It doesn't always happen. But those final 20 minutes, and I'll say no more about what happens in them, makes it all worthwhile. It's really beautiful, heart-tugging. It's the kind of ending where you think, okay, it could have been much more manipulative. Instead, it's just real and beautifully told. I'm very, very kind of moved that these two actors were able to kind of convey something this powerful, and it makes it worth the while. Paddleton is streaming right now on Netflix.
I'm Patrick Corelchi.
And I'm Adriana Cortez, and we're the hosts of Red Pilled America, a new storytelling podcast.
Red Pilled America is not another talk show covering the day's news. We are all about telling stories. Stories Hollywood doesn't want you to hear. Stories the media mocks. Stories about everyday Americans that the elites ignore. You could think of Red Pilled America as audio documentaries, and we promise only one thing: the truth.
Visit the iHeartRadio app right now to listen to Red Pilled America.
Now let's get to this week's HitCast interview. Stand-up comedian Alex Elkin has a confession to make. He's happily married with 3 lovely kids. Yet he's still so good at making us laugh. Now, personal dysfunction often fuels a lot of stand-up comedy. But not for Alex. He'd rather focus on uplifting humor. And, of course, even the occasional Trump joke. But, yes, his impression's pretty darn good. You're going to hear it soon. But it's not filled with hate. How refreshing is that? Having said that, Alex isn't afraid to poke the woke beast, as it were. Nor does he back down from how easily Facebook will send you to Facebook jail if you say the wrong thing. His comments on that particular subject are enlightening and smart, kind of like Alex himself. Here's my chat with a very funny comedian, Alex Elkin. Alex, I was kind of curious, when was the first time you realized you were not just funny, but professionally funny? Because, there's always the funny guy in biology class, but obviously you're a stand-up comedian, you're successful. Was there a moment earlier in your life where you realized that, hey, I wasn't just a cut-up, it's something that I could do professionally?
Yeah, it was actually in high school. It was the annual talent show, and I was a freshman, new to the school, and I wrote a stand-up comedy act. And I gave it a try, and it didn't just hit, but it really hit. The judges loved it. I was their favorite. The audience, loved it, and I was their favorite. And it was all over CCTV throughout the city of San Dimas at the time, and so people were watching it at home, and they loved it. And so it not only did I win the whole thing, but yeah, it gave me that confidence to think that maybe this could be a career move. I didn't really think of it that way at that time, but it gave me the confidence to know that, I can make money at this.
Gotcha. And if you looked at that material now compared to what you do today, was it similar, or did you have a similar approach, or have you kind of matured or grown or sort of changed the direction of your routine?
Yeah, I would hope that I've matured and grown. I was 14 years old when I wrote it, and I have to admit now, and this is the first time I've admitted it publicly, 1/3 of it, about 3 minutes of that 9-minute act, I ripped off of Gary Shandling from Comic Relief 1984 or 5 or 6 or something. And it was a bit about his shaky dog, and I changed it around to be about my grandmother. Now I didn't know any better at the time. I didn't realize that was a no-no in the comedy world. I didn't go out onto to the store and do it or anything. It was just for that talent show. Mm-hmm. But I think the storytelling element with the jokes thrown in between to keep people interested has always been my style. And I'm sticking to that, but I've of course found my voice now.
Yeah. Talk about when you first start hitting stages professionally beyond being 14. Did you lean any maybe local comics who helped you out, or were there any Shandling-like figures where you thought, I want to follow that career because that's something that I admire, I kind of connect with, and I think I could do something similar? Anything like that?
Oh, absolutely. There's always people that I followed. Unfortunately, in the comedy world, and this is just a basic truth, when you're funny, comics don't want to talk to you anymore. They'll tell you how great you are when you get off stage after you've just crapped the bed. But once you really start killing and you start doing well, nobody tells you, hey, good set anymore, because, there's too much jealousy and animosity. I'll tell you, there's too much comedy in this drama business is what it is. And so, I would love to say that, I don't know, somebody took me under their wing and let me open for them and, showed me the ropes, and, not really, man. I had to fumble through a lot on my own, and I made a lot of mistakes, and I learned from those things, and it's kind of grown me into the comic that I am. I mean, there's people that have given me breaks. Ralphie was a great guy.
Mm-hmm.
He let me go with him for a couple of weeks. And then there was Carlos, who just gave me his phone number and said, anytime, any place in the country you want to go up, you give me a call.
Wow.
And that's cool. Bobby Lee gave me his phone number at one point and actually gave me some really good advice about doing comedy and starting comedy. Mm-hmm. But as far as real influences, I had to find them on my own. I went and George Carlin was a huge influence, and because he didn't go the Hollywood route. He built his own audience to where he could walk into any city in the country, fill up a theater, and kill them, and go do it again somewhere else. And he didn't have to rely on Hollywood or television to do that for him. Mm-hmm. And I love that. I love Bill Burr's attitude of, look, I don't have to appeal to feminists. I don't have to appeal to, diversity or whatever you want to call it, or, any kind of buzzword now that we want to throw out there. I'm just going to do it my way. And if you like it, great. And if you don't, hey, up yours. And then I love Brian Regan, man. He's clean as a whistle, and he does what he wants, when he wants, how he wants to do it. Nobody's telling him what to do. Mm-hmm. And I've always believed in Steve Martin saying, be so good that they can't ignore you. And those are pretty much my big influences.
Yeah. One of your most recent routines involves your son, and I guess the transition from being a boy to a man. I thought, funny stuff, you can all relate, but I'm also thinking, when you do personal stuff about family, marriage, things like that, do you have to run the jokes past your family members, or do you kind of you just kind of go with it, or what's that process like for a comedian?
I don't know how it is for other comedians. I'm one of the happy ones. You know what I mean? I've got the family. I've got the wife. We've been together 16 years, and we've got 3 kids, and everybody's functional, and it's not what you normally see from most comics. Usually they want to talk about the dark and the depressing and the marriage is falling apart and the cheating and so I don't really feel like I need to run my stuff by them, because I don't. I'm out here doing what I do to bring back the money so that they can go do what they want to do. And so there's an understanding too. I didn't spring it on my wife. Hey, I want to be a comedian. I started this long before I knew her, and she came into this life and accepted it. Gotcha. And the children were born into it. They don't know any other way. They don't know their papa doing anything else but comedy. They've been to shows. They help me sell DVDs. They make shirts. They know this life. So they love it. They're part of it. My kids are in the back peeing their pants when I can bring them to shows. And, they know where the truth nuggets are, and they know where I'm embellishing to get the laugh. But as long as it's relatable and it keeps people coming back, man, that's what we're looking for.
Do you see signs of your sense of humor in them, your kids, when sort of I know my kids occasionally will shock me with something they'll say that's really oddly clever and adult, and I was kind of curious, as someone who's got this comedy family, do you sort of see mini stand-ups kind of blossoming in your household?
Absolutely, yeah. My oldest son, not so much a stand-up, but he is he's like me. I was the class clown, but I didn't get in trouble for it, because it was always humor that even the teacher could laugh about. Uh-huh. And so if the teacher was laughing, they certainly weren't reprimanding. So I don't want to say I was, super intelligent, but I smartly got my way through school with not having to perform as well, as long as I got everybody to like me with jokes. And so I think my oldest son has taken on that characteristic, because he's very popular, he's charismatic, and he has a good sense of humor. My 11-year-old, he is the stand-up comic. He wants to be the performer, and he is like me a lot, though, but he doesn't have a filter. So his things come out raw, and I can see the humor in it, but the problem is it's coming out of an 11-year-old mouth, and you're immediately just, how dare you, So I have to take that into consideration when I hear him. But they're night and day. And then my little girl, she's blossoming into a little person with a personality, and she's very clever, very funny. But my 11-year-old, if anybody's going to go out and probably try and be a stand-up, it's going to be my 11-year-old. He's already written jokes. He's written an act. He's got he wants to do puppets and all kinds of stuff. Yeah.
Well, speaking of filter, I often ask this about comedians when I interview them for the podcast. When you think about today's culture and political correctness, and certain subjects seem either taboo or at least that maybe a minefield, do you think about that? You have a very positive approach, and you admire a Bill Burr for what he does. Does it ever filter into what you say or don't say? Maybe the comic tangents you consider, or do you kind of push it all aside?
No. First of all, I go for what the contract tells me. If I'm on a cruise ship and they want squeaky clean material, I'm not going to even delve into that. I'm not an artist there. I'm a performer, but really, it comes to the audience, man. It's so funny. I went to Little Rock, Arkansas to record my album because I felt I'm in Eugene, Oregon, and this is too left wing, man. I can't record it here because they're not going to have a sense of humor about it. Nobody can be a victim, on the left, and every joke has a victim, so that doesn't mesh. So I thought I'd go to Little Rock, Arkansas. And I'm such an idiot because I go to the one place in the country that is the Eugene, Oregon of Arkansas. And I look at the political map, and if there's one blue dot in the state, it's Little Rock, Arkansas. And so what I did was I managed my material. I found who the audience was and who I was appealing to. And without pandering, I led them on this little comedy trek, and we laughed all along the way, as you can tell through the album. And I touch on some stuff that people aren't supposed to touch on, especially not a cis white male, somebody that has never experienced the struggle or whatever you want to call it. Because obviously everybody knows my past and my history, and I just grew up in a bed of roses, unlike the rest of the world of people of color or people that, lie on that side of the aisle that, obviously have more life experience than anybody else because, they get more speeding tickets or whatever, So I go with what the audience wants, but I still get my point across. I still present it to them. I take the ideas that society gives us and I put up a mirror and I go, hey, isn't this stupid? Let's take a look at this. Let's laugh at this together, and that's where I try to take them. Yeah.
I'm curious, comedy in the age of Trump seems complicated in a way because he's very ripe for humor. At the same time, it seems like a lot of the jokes are very similar. He's got the orange face, the hair, blah, blah, blah.
I don't understand. I don't understand what you're talking about. I can't imagine why anybody would laugh at the dear president. He's a terrific person. Great man. I know him. He's great. He's good. Great.
And that's a pretty darn good impression. I heard it's a championship winning impression as well. What's your key to? I don't know how much of Trump you do on stage, but when you bring up the president in any kind of comedic fashion, what's your angle? Because I think it could be some angles seem overplayed already.
Absolutely. Everybody's heard that the president is orange. We get it. Yeah. But when did it become okay to start making fun of people's skin color again? That's what I want to know.
That's right.
My angle is you've got to ride the line. You've got to hit it on both sides. You got to remember that neither side cares about you, and if you're paying attention to one side over the other, then you're not paying attention. Mm-hmm. You have to come down the middle. You have to look at the stupidity of both sides, and I try to put myself in the audience shoes, and I don't try to overbear them with my political views or thoughts, but I do try to question the thoughts that I disagree with. So if I'm going to come at it, say an opening line, if I'm going to even bring up the president, I'll start with a funny impression just to put my toe in the water. I'll say something funny. I'll be like, that's a terrific joke. It's very funny, believe me. And depending on how the audience reacts, if they laugh, then I know I can usually move forward. And if I can hear their buttholes puckering up, then I know I need to change directions and maybe not go down that path. But when I do delve into it, I still delve into it with an idea of look, if you believe in this world that there is absolute good and absolute evil, you're living in a Disney movie, okay? There is no good and evil here. This is all mixed bags of all kinds of crap. And you have to take the good with the bad. And so you have to understand, you know, that I'm a comedian. I had to vote for him. That's 4 years of job security for me. You know, I mean, this stuff writes itself. And, you know, I'll make a joke about, you know, I don't know if you've noticed, but our president occasionally, he likes to Twitter once in a while, you know, and people laugh at that. And, you know, but I bring out the aspect too that, I mean, one part of my act, I talk about how we've all got that good friend that knows when we've, you know, tweeted too much or Facebook too much, or if you're drunk texting that ex, they know to slap that phone out of your hand, you know, and you stop that. Don't do that. The problem is the president doesn't have a friend. You know, he doesn't have any friends. He doesn't have anybody that's going to slap a gold-plated iPhone out of his fudgy little orange fingers. Nobody's going to say, you know, go poop by yourself. Okay. So he's just going to go off with the handle and blah, 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 whatever he wants. And I read the president's Twitter feed much like I imagine Jesus Christ watches the 700 Club, you know, just sort of like, oh no, I didn't say that. Oh, my dad. You know what I mean? Just I try to make a joke out of it from either side without pushing another side, so that both sides can laugh at it and hopefully, for God's sakes, agree on something.
Yeah. I want to switch gears real briefly. I understand you went to Iraq last year to entertain the troops, and kind of curious about what your bigger takeaways from that. You know, I'm sure there were things you expected to happen. I'm sure you thought that the troops would be extremely glad to get some great jokes. But what did you kind of come away with from having done that? Because it seems like a life-altering experience in a way.
You know, it really is. You understand some fundamental truths about the world and how people are and how backwards cultures can be. You know, we spent a few days in Kuwait, which is, you know, a pretty hostile country and, you know, very oil rich and very wealthy. And what we learned is that modern day slavery totally exists. And, you know, in Kuwait, everybody gets every family member, a Kuwaiti family member, gets about a $3,300 a month stipend, and that's in Kuwaiti dinari, which would be about $9,900 our money every month, and that's every person from baby to great grandma. So what they do is they gather together in family units and they pool their money and they buy these great palaces and they live like kings and queens. And because of this money, nobody really has to own a business or start any kind of, you know, shops or anything. So poorer countries, the Philippines, for example, and you know, poorer countries around them, Afghanistan and places like that, they'll purchase the visas for these people to come over and work. And the problem is, man, it turns into a Jacob and Laban situation, and they never pay off their visas. They never get that debt paid down. Yeah. And so you've literally got these slaves working for these people in this country, and everybody's okay with it. We're driving down a road and we see palaces on one side of these giant homes, and literally on the other side of the street are the slum apartments where their slaves live. And there's literally cars on fire and trash hanging out of windows and, you know, just disgusting life right there in front of you.
Yeah.
And you know, that kind of stuff, you realize, my God, how good we have it here. The people that, you know, want to go outside and you know, block traffic for freedom and wear their safety pins and complain about, you know, America's bad and you know, we need to look at socialism. Take a look at what's going on in countries like this. Go take a flight to the Middle East and go see what slavery looks like in this country, and see if you want to come back to a place where you can walk outside and actually complain about this stuff.
Yeah. Well,
not be killed for it.
One thing you complained about on YouTube and your YouTube channel was Facebook and Facebook jail. And I was kind of curious. It was a funny bit, and I'll include it on the show notes page. But were you ever kind of banned briefly by Facebook? I was kind of curious what inspired that.
Oh man, I've done 3 stints. The first time it was our dear president. He got me in trouble because he went on Twitter and he told us that we're not going to be allowing any more transgenders into America's military. #done. And so I got on Facebook and I said, Trump just banned trannies from the military. Well, good luck getting those tanks and jeeps out of first gear, idiot. And immediately 30 days in the hole, no trial, no jury, just. And I wasn't sure what got me thrown in. Was it Trump or tranny? And so after the 30 days, I tried it again. Turns out it was what I thought it was. Because I got on Facebook and I was lamenting the death of my 2004 Kia Amante, beautiful ride, rocket pinion, front wheel drive. Anyway, it's $1,200 best offer. It wouldn't move on me one day, and I get on Facebook and I said, my Kia is acting like when Bruce Jenner took acid, the tranny dropped out, and immediately. Alex Elkin, that joke did not meet Facebook community standards. Whatever the hell Facebook community standards are. I don't remember when we got together and voted on the community standards of Facebook because I've seen some horse crap running through my community. But whatever, you know what I mean? It's the social justice warriors. It's the 400-pound kids that are still living at home with their moms. They're 35 years old. They got their green hair and their bag of Cheetos and an orange wang, and they're sitting there in their basements just blocking everybody, telling what you can and can't say online.
Yeah, it's amazing. At the very least, you made some humorous sides about it, maybe made some people think about it as well. But, Alex, I want to thank you for joining the HitCast. Please grab Alex's new album, Screaming at Shapes. You can get it on iTunes right now. And also make sure you check him out at a comedy club near you. He's on tour. Thanks again, Alex. I really appreciate it, and hope we can chat again soon.
Absolutely. My pleasure, man. Thanks a lot.
Well, thanks again for listening. Don't forget to check out HollywoodandToto.com for both the show notes and, of course, the latest entertainment news. Please follow me at Twitter at HollywoodandToto. And we'd love it if you leave a podcast review over at iTunes. See you next week.